Welcome to Women's Health Tech Wednesday. I'm your host for the day. My name is Charles Narain. I'm the strategy associate for HitLab. Before we get started, I want to let everyone know about our virtual April symposium. It is free to attend. Tickets will be available in the link in the chat. We also have our spring summit coming up next month, and this will be an in-person event in New York City. Tickets are also available in the chat, so please make sure to look for the link. Now, I'd like to introduce our guest for today, Dr. Mary Catherine George, Director of Clinical Research Program at Mount Sinai. Dr. MC, please introduce yourself to the audience.
Hi, yes. So I have a very unusual background. I started out as an opera singer in New York, and I fell into research in the height of the HIV epidemic, and eventually decided I have to join as an official PhD, and went back to school and got my health psychology degree. And now I'm focusing all of my research on what we call chronic pain, and especially the pain that is challenging for women.
Got you. Thank you so much for joining us. For those of us who have not seen you before on one of our Hit Lab programs, can you please give a brief introduction to yourself and the work you do in your position at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai?
Well, I love innovation and research. That's been one of the biggest things, and I'm what we call a qualitative researcher. I love to understand patients and why they choose to be in research. And I think that's what also drew me to chronic pain as well, because people can be clinically identical, but both will be different when it comes to sharing about their pain experience. One person might tell you, oh, I have pain of a 2 out of a 10, and yet clinically they're identical to the person to the left who's expressing an 8 out of 10. And so why is that? It's because many times our pain perception is developed through kind of a complex component of our life, our environment, and what we're actually experiencing is different than the person next to you who might clinically look the same. It's fascinating is what it is. And I think that's what drew me in, because we don't have good treatments for pain. Yet I know that behavioral treatments, which is what I focus on, they're available, they can help people, but I think it doesn't seem approachable to get a behavioral treatment when you have chronic pain. I think people want to take a pill because they feel like that's going to give them the pain relief, but I'm working really diligently in the studies that I do to see how we can help get better pain medicines and also get easier access to behavioral medicine. And that's what I'm working on, is I'm taking this concept of self-hypnosis, which has been used for treating pain for years. People have treated pain with self-hypnosis for over 20 years. And yet many people, when they hear hypnosis, they think of, someone making you cluck like a chicken on the stage, or they just don't feel like it's something they could do. And yet we've done studies, both in patients with breast cancer, where they were doing breast biopsies, and we did it in HIV, chronic pain, nerve pain. And we've seen that if you teach a person how to work with self-hypnosis, they can have pain relief. But often it's difficult to get to a therapist or afford the pain, afford these sessions. So my goal is to take the concept, put it in a software, and give it to a person in a virtual reality dynamic. And so I've been working really intensely to focus on a very challenging area of women who have suffered from a mastectomy that is continuing to have pain. And this is one of the most challenging areas, because many patients who recover from their breast cancer They don't feel like they could, could complain about the pain they're having from the surgery. And so, it's a very complex condition. And, many people who have a mastectomy, that are women who have these mastectomies, they're very extensive. It's very complex. It's both nerve pain and musculoskeletal pain, and this kind of emotional dynamic of recovering from cancer or still having to do some treatments and follow up for breast cancer. So I'm really wanting to get in there and give patients a tool that they can take home and use at their own discretion as frequently as they want to give them a behavioral treatment that will train them to have reduced pain so they can function and go to work and do whatever they need to do for their life. And so that's my real goal. I'm very excited because we spent the past year developing the software. We've tested it amongst ourselves. I feel tremendously happy about it and just ready to begin giving it to patients in a research study.
Got you. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm curious to know what's the name of the software?
So we're calling it Comfort Wave VR because the goal is, it's not really hypnosis that you're going to be experiencing when you're in this virtual reality. We're sort of using the hypnosis dynamic as a paradigm. We're really wanting to understand is if you give someone an immersive experience that is similar to what would have been the training you would get from a therapist, that it would be something similar to being self-hypnotized in yourself, but even maybe more. So we're learning what does this immersive experience that we're presenting to you, what does that do to you behaviorally? And what was very interesting is that, when I was working to get the FDA to perhaps look at my device and what would they consider to give it an approval, they really wanted to see biological changes. And so, that's what we're looking for is if you've got chronic pain, and then we are going to give you this device, we want to understand biologically, does this help with your heart rate, make you feel calmer? Does it help with your pain perception beyond the time frame that you use it? So we're going to learn so much from giving this to patients and letting them work with it for 3 weeks. So I'm very excited to see how patients interact with this software. Comfort Wave VR.
Thank you. And I guess I'm curious to know, how did you identify post mastectomy pain syndrome, or in other words, PMPS, as the key area where this technology could make such a significant impact?
Well, when you have a complex pain condition, and we were looking at cancer pain, and I was profoundly shocked to learn that post-mastectomy pain syndrome is the most prominent pain condition in cancer. And so I couldn't believe that 30 to 60% of women who have a mastectomy can have some kind of ongoing pain after the surgery. And so when I learned that, and that's really what I'm focusing on is how can we get this treatment to those participants who have the hardest pain to treat. And to me, it's the post-mastectomy pain syndrome condition is the most complex. You've got someone who's had a radical mastectomy. They've had their lymph glands probably removed from under their arm, maybe some muscle, maybe some tendons and tissue, and then the breast tissue. And then, it's typically a combination of what we call two types of pain. One is nerve pain and one is musculoskeletal pain. And the type of nerve pain that happens when people have mastectomies is called allodynia. And this is a weird kind of pain because it's when something soft touches your skin, it hurts. So you are surprised. It's hard for you to wear certain clothing. It's hard for you to put on a bra or wear some kind of prosthetic. So I think going after this patient population would offer, many things for women who are suffering with this condition. And I think also, too, it will help us understand more about this pain syndrome and help us better characterize what their experience is. Because part of my study is to have this kind of qualitative interview. And we're going to do that for this group at the beginning to get a sense of tell us what your pain experience is about. And then after they have the treatment, we're going to ask them, so how did this treatment help that pain experience? So I think traditionally people just really don't know enough about this condition. And we really want to dig in and see not only if we can understand the pain condition better, but
Mhm.
secondarily, can this Comfort Wave VR be a potential treatment?
For sure. I mean, I definitely see the importance of utilizing a qualitative method to kind of conduct this research, really trying to understand the nuances and the experiences of these individuals, especially because we don't know that much about this space in the first place. I
Yes.
know we talked a little bit about launching the study with an FDA abbreviated device approval. And I would say that that's a pretty significant achievement. I'd love if you could just kind of walk us through the approval process and what it means for the credibility and the future of Comfort Wave VR in chronic pain management.
Well, what's so wonderful for now that we are doing so many things that are digital and software, the FDA has made the system of engaging them early in your development process a little easier. They have a process now that's called a Q submission. And this is an opportunity for you as an innovator to really tell them about what you're creating and potentially ask some very critical questions about what would they see as the elements that you would need to provide that would give you a good chance. They have this program called the Breakthrough Device Program. And what's so wonderful about the Breakthrough Device Program is as an innovator, once you get that indication, you can then do one study that shows it works and it gets you into the marketplace. And it also gets you at the front of the line of getting what we call MCA clearance or that Medicare kind of clearance for insurance coverage. So for me, I really wanted to submit a Q submission to ask about the breakthrough device because pain is so sorely treated. It's not a good treatment out there. Many people who suffer with pain is really difficult, and opioids are just not the answer. So I think, having things that would be potentially a tool you can give to a patient is powerful. So the FDA and I had an amazing email conversation with the Q submission, and they recommended, that I get this, what they call an abbreviated exemption to do my feasibility study with, and to come back to them with data and to show that I do have some data that's biological, like heart rate variability and maybe function, to start getting the necessary information so I could be considered for the future breakthrough indication for my device. But these things with the FDA, I started that in 2023, but I got the abbreviated indication last year, which is wonderful. And it allows me to collect data and begin the kind of like gathering of the data to make my to make my appeal to the FDA plausible.
Got you. I mean, can definitely understand it being potentially a cumbersome project in trying to communicate with them. I'm curious to know, like, in terms of any preliminary data or just like the any clinical data that you've kind of gathered to support the effectiveness of Comfort Wave.
So we don't have any yet. We just have our study team who's working with it, and I have my own personal experience, which is I'm biased. I
Mhm,
used the device before I had a major surgery, which was a hysterectomy in October. I didn't use any opioids for my recovery, and I was really impressed. And so I'm personally using it to explore it because I want to understand it myself. And I
mhm,
also, too, want to keep myself open to what a participant's viewpoint is. And so we kind of took a step back because not many of our participants are familiar with using a virtual reality tool. So we
mhm.
wanted to have screenshots to help the participants find the location in that kind of looking it forward. It's a very kind of disorienting feeling, and to know what you're going to pick and choose. So we have the IRB reviewing this patient handbook, and we've also decided to have a period of time post-treatment so we can understand if a person is still getting some benefit at least 4 weeks out. So I think we've modified some things, and we're ready to go, and we'll start giving it to patients at the end of April. So I'm very excited.
Oh my God, that's so exciting. Definitely coming up. So,
Yeah, we're ready. I tell you something, I have a waiting list. Because patients really, when I talk about this, they're like, where can I get it?
mhm,
And we've gotten all kinds of people telling us, oh, could this be for a treatment when I'm getting something done in the hospital? Or, so really, I can't wait to get some preliminary data because I do believe this could be a really useful tool for
mhm,
patients when it comes to pain.
for sure. Uh, so I'm a little curious about like the role of virtual reality in medical treatments, especially, in the context of chronic pain management when compared to traditional methods like, opioids and things like that.
Well, the key is that, if you can modify how someone perceives their pain, you're really doing a huge you're doing a huge benefit for that patient. And I think there is some things out there, the cognitive behavioral therapies. Those are out there and they do wonderful, but they are like a 8 to 12-week process where you're teaching a person a variety of behavioral techniques to help with their pain. I think, there is self-hypnosis that you can be trained to do, but again, I think sometimes patients, when they think of behavioral treatments, they always think of it as something that costs them money, and the insurances don't cover it. And pills are covered by insurance, and they're the most readily available by the physician. And when physicians, if a handful of physicians will recommend acupuncture, they'll recommend mindfulness, they'll recommend, yoga. But many patients, I find, don't follow through with behavioral treatments. So the more we can make them accessible, and I know that VR has penetrated into the rehab area hugely, because many times you can get a patient to engage in a VR game that simulates the same kind of exercises for your back as if you were working with a physical therapist. So there are some great gains in physical therapy using VR. There's also some amazing things happening with what we call body dysmorphia. There's a wonderful VR system that has been made that helps people who have body dysmorphia, and it helps modify how they feel about their body. There's VR systems that also help people with kind of traumatic phobias, like, if you're phobic to, heights or certain bugs or certain things, that they can give you an intensive treatment in a safety of your therapist space, but you're experiencing the trauma to get over it. So it's really phenomenal what we're going to be able to do with VR. I know it's being used a great deal in education and teaching with people who are learning about surgery and all kinds of things that you can do in the virtual realm that really branches you into having more courage when you don't have the VR headset on. So to me, I think we're just now entering into the possibilities of virtual reality and how it can help us medically.
Got you. And I guess what are some key features that really differentiate Comfort Wave VR from, other virtual reality or pain management devices currently available?
Well, I can't really discuss that, because it's very we've modeled it on about 200 to 400 experiences of people being given self-hypnosis.
Mhm.
And so it's sort of like what floated to the top of all these experiences as the primary dynamic. And so, it's very brief. It's only about 17 minutes, and it's a very slow and well-paced interaction that we're hoping will give the same type of experience as if you've been trained to give yourself a self-hypnosis experience. But we're not sure about that yet. We're still going to discover it, and we'll know more once we start giving it to patients. So I'm testing 25 patients to see how they interact with this. And I think the things that are out there right now, there's one company that has a CBT model that's inside a virtual reality tool. It's made by
Mhm.
Allied Health. And I just learned of another tool that's for anxiety and some other type of psychological conditions. And they have a tool where, again, it's an experience where they help a person. And these are all using kind of relaxation techniques,
Mhm.
and we're not sure how I don't know how it's going to benefit these patients, but we're excited to see because of my own experience and my study team's experience using it. We're excited to see how patients will react.
Got you. And just kind of looking forward, what kind of partnerships or collaborations are you seeking to advance the development and then consequently the distribution of Comfort Wave VR?
You know,
And,
I'm, oh,
oops,
go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead.
No, I think the key is that I want to partner with a company that's already has a good footprint, and I want to bring the research science component to the VR development for this for chronic pain versus being a company. I want to be a partnership. And so to me, it's about finding a company that has the VR kind of background and also has some penetration already into a marketplace through their VR systems or software to be provided. Because ultimately, if I can make this something that can be prescribed, and either you get a headset shipped to you that already has it uploaded, or if you have a headset that you just download it with your prescription number and you have it
Mhm.
available to you because your doctor prescribed it. I really want it to be something so easily accessible that it really removes
Mhm.
the barrier from you engaging in a behavioral type of treatment.
For sure. I mean, that accessibility point really is incredibly important. Kind of expanding a little bit on that, what role do you think does patient education play in the effectiveness of, Comfort Wave VR? And how do you really ensure that patients fully understand how to use the device for optimal, results?
Well, we have been practicing this, and I think that's why the handbook is really key. We learned through our own experiences and just taking people who've never used a VR headset that's amongst the study team and say, okay, we tried it by just handing it to them and that doesn't work. You really, really have to walk through the process first, showing them their expectation of what you're going to see. Because it is a little disorienting. Once you put that headset on, the reality that you were in is gone, and you're only seeing what's in the headset, and it does feel a little out of body. So helping that patient sort of understand what to expect, and then also too to make the headset feel comfortable on your head. We
Mhm.
want you to feel comfortable, so it's helping that patient fit it to their face, make it feel, well situated. If you got to wear glasses, to make sure that the little eye things are in the right place, or you have a glass guard. So let me tell you something. We're thinking through this very thoroughly because we understand there's patients of all types, colors, languages. And, my goal is to try and get as many English speakers at first, but I'm anxious to get a Spanish version to see how well it's received in Spanish as well. So I'm truly uh, thinking ahead as much as possible to
Hmm.
help that patient. Not, because we don't want this just because they're using VR to be a barrier. Because many people, even the cell phone, like my mother, she's like, I don't even know how to turn this thing on or find whatever. We just don't want it to be a piece of something that sits in the box.
For sure. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I feel like that engagement with the patient is super important to really allow. And I mean, from what you're saying, the guidebook really does take a very comprehensive approach to understanding what the patient is thinking about. And even like with the glasses situation, I wear glasses, but sometimes I can really feel like, okay, wait, I don't know if I'm playing sports, if this is like the right situation, and then I have to,
I know.
I definitely do see like the importance of having that check in place.
Mm-hmm.
I do
Exactly.
want to be mindful of the time,
Sure.
so I'm going to
Oh,
ask
yes.
a really quick question.
Sure.
I guess what kind of long-term impact do you anticipate Comfort Wave VR to have on the pain management field in general, like overall?
Oh, I see it as very impactful. I think it's going to bring this concept of hypnosis more into practice. Something we've all known has been a very effective pain treatment, and yet it's something that's very rarely acted on. And so I think by having a tool that can easily be handed to a patient, prescribed to a patient, is going to be a game changer because it's going to work in partnership with a person's pain meds. They can continue to take their pain meds, and also, too, it might help avoid opioids entirely. And
Hmm.
also, too, even though people might be still feeling some of their pain, it's not going to go away. This
Hmm.
will allow them to have a tool that while they're functioning, they can just think back and reflect. Oh, that's right. I can put my brain in that space I've come to know that's in Comfort Wave. And even
Hmm.
though I'm standing in line here at the post office, I'm not going to be in as much pain because I'm thinking about my safe place.
Wow. Yeah, really just creating a holistic approach to treatment.
Hmm.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. MC, for your time today.
Thank you.
Um, Excited for everyone to join us. I want to remind everyone to join us next week, and also want to thank our sponsors. And one last huge shout out to Dr. MC. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. Have a great one.